Welcome to the Awakened Human Podcast, the place to be for highly progressive yet extremely grounded intuitive guidance, energetic support, metaphysical tools, and higher consciousness for highly successful, ambitious, soul-centered visionaries and leaders like you who want to make a global impact and achieve your highest fulfillment by aligning with your soul's true divine agenda and your role in God's source creators, the divine's plan for lighted creation, and by utilizing your divine gifts, talents, and abilities from the higher realms. We do this by working with the non-physical realms of higher guidance, energy, intuition, and powerful metaphysical tools for healing and transformation. We understand that the real change and transformation that's being called for on planet Earth and in our own lives and our own businesses doesn't come from outside of us, and it doesn't come from the top or from the bottom, but rather from within. And that the change that we desire to experience in our lives and in our world requires us to change from the inside. I'm your host, Laurie Anne Spagna. I'm a best-selling author, spiritual catalyst, intuitive, energy worker, ascension guide, multidimensional channel, animal communicator, visionary, lightworker, and luminary. I have dedicated my entire professional life to helping thousands and thousands of humans and animals all over the world in service and contribution to the light, which is the expansion, the upliftment, the evolution of humanity, to awaken, to uplift, and to align with our true divine source, which exists within each and every one of us. It is my passion, joy, and purpose to share this information, energy, and consciousness with you. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing time with me. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Awakened, Enlightened Human Podcast. I love all the votes that have been coming through on the Facebook group. And by the time you're hearing this, probably those votes will be long gone. But thank you to those of you who did vote. I am your host, Laurie Anne Spagna, as you know. Today, we're going to chat briefly about really understanding your divine intuition and helping you to understand more and more about the intuitive gifts that we all have, which are starting to become more and more, I think, more and more mainstream. But still, I mean, you can go out in the world, and I like to work at the coffee shop sometimes in the evenings because especially in the winter, the coffee shops are open later and it's too dark to be outside really, other than like walking my dog, which I love, but I can work late and I enjoy it. And anyway, at the end of the night, I was chatting with some of the people there and I was telling them a little, because I see them every night whenever I'm there, they're always there. And they were asking me about what I do on the computer so late at night when sometimes I'm seeming to talk to myself on the computer. What am I doing? And I told them a little bit about my work, and the idea of what I was saying was so foreign to them and so out of their purview. They didn't know what to make of it. It was almost like, I mean, I get it. That's not my core audience. Those aren't the kind of people who would listen to my podcast or be in my community, but there's still obviously a whole segment of the population on Earth where it's still they're watching these sensationalist TV shows, TV programs like, is it real that someone could be psychic? Is it possible to connect? Let's track with our meter to see if there's any spirits in this room. Like, it's sensationalism. Those programs, whether they're opening the minds of people, maybe that's true, but it's so positioned in such a way that it's hard to believe, and it's very much like discredited. That's like the whole history behind all of this so-called, what's been called, I remember one of my assistants several years ago, she was in college and she would use the word woo-woo. And I was like, what is woo-woo? And she's like, well, that's what you do. You're in the woo-woo world. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Like, I don't know that word. Now I do. Now I use it actually quite a bit, but she was the one who introduced me to that word. And I get it because that's the way the mainstream has been conditioned to see and perceive this stuff. And it's a good way to discredit and disempower people. And it's a great way to introduce a lot of doubt and skepticism and disbelief into the mainstream ideology by creating those kinds of shows that are very skeptical and cynical, when really this stuff is so organic and original to who we are. This is the truth of who we are, is that we are all intuitive. We are all psychic. And I want to go into that word a little bit. And we all have the ability to heal ourselves and one another. And we all have extrasensory abilities. Now, we're not all using them the same way. And most of us are not very well developed in them. And most of us have not cultivated them. And a lot of us are misusing them. And a lot of us don't really understand how to utilize them in the highest and most benevolent, best ways. That's a huge part of what I teach, because I don't typically work with people who don't have any connection to that. Like, I have worked with skeptics and cynics, disbelievers and doubters, but they do tend to not progress as well. And generally speaking, those aren't people who stick around in my field as much anymore, my energy field, because it's too far out there for them. But this is what I'm saying. Our old paradigm has kind of conditioned us to believe it's woo-woo. Movies sort of make this stuff a little crazy. They characterize. That's a very good strategic approach, to characterize and sort of discredit this stuff, because it's incredibly empowering once you learn how to utilize this and apply it. Once you learn how to develop and cultivate your innate intuitive gifts. So it's a great way to disempower people, to discredit and to sort of character assassin the archetype of psychic or of healer. And they do it in all the movies, and they make them seem like crazies and insane when it's just so discredited, right? So here's the reality. We all have these abilities, and now it is so scientifically valid. So let's just break it down so you can start to know. I teach this in all my entry level classes, which now it's like I teach it in one. It used to be 3 sessions. Now it's like 10 minutes, right? I'm going to do it right here for you. So simple. We all have a pineal gland and a pituitary gland, which are master glands in the center rear of the brain, kind of like sort of somewhere around here on the side, if you can see the podcast. In the back rear of the brain, kind of maybe more like sort of like back here. Anyway, that pituitary gland and pineal gland, 2 master glands, they're housed inside of the brain in an area called the Cave of Brahma. It looked like a sea. It keeps them safe because they're so delicate, and they're master glands. And they are the extrasensory glands that allow us to sense and see and perceive things beyond the physical world and beyond our everyday perception. Those master glands in spiritual circles are called the third eye, because you're using a part of your sight that comes from your inner eye. So they just position it here, but it goes straight through this section in the center of the forehead, just above the eyes. Okay, regardless of how it's identified, it's real. Those master glands are really, and this is scientifically valid, they're what see, they're what perceive. It's not even your eyes that see. It's not even your ears that hear. Your ears are tubes or funnels to vibrate frequency and vibration and sound waves that come in through the brain and get registered and get identified through those master glands, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. So it's actually the glands that hear. You're already psychic. You're already using extrasensory abilities to hear. By the way, that extrasensory ability is called clairaudient, the ability to hear. And then the third eye, the ability to see, is clairvoyant, the ability to see. It's not your eyes that see. Your eyes are lenses that filter. Same thing. They filter in light, various light frequencies, and it goes back through the brain to that master gland, which gets processed. So you're already, to some degree, basically living your life as a clairvoyant, seeing and perceiving through that third eye area. And in our old paradigm, we just believed it was the eyes that see, when in fact, they're just lenses for light, to filter the light. Now, it's important to say here, with this extrasensory ability, which allows for clairaudience and or clairvoyance, there's other clairs, we'll talk about them too, that for the vast majority of humans, this third eye area or this master gland is calcified. What does that mean? And why does that happen? If you've been in my community, if you've listened to me long enough, you've probably heard me say this. It's calcified from artificial food substances, especially artificial sweeteners, especially fluoride in the water. By the way, if you haven't heard this already, like this is old news to me, but fluoride in the water was introduced after it was studied. Fluoride was studied, and sadly, of course, this is sad, but it was studied on prisoners during World War II in Nazi Germany in camps, right? And it made them more docile. It dumbed them down and made them easier to control, the prisoners in the camps. So it was introduced into the mainstream. And I mean, conspiracy, not conspiracy, that's up to you to decide. But it was known that fluoride would dumb people down because it's a known neurotoxin. And so, of course, if it calcifies third eye area, naturally, it's making someone less able to use their extrasensory abilities. And I mean, the research on this is out, right? So this is not a debate whether or not that's true. The conspiracy behind it might be a debate, but there's a lot of evidence that the information and the studies that were put out to tell people that it helps your teeth, which is why they said they were doing it back then, that may or not be true. I haven't done enough research on that, but that was the data that was presented. Was that data factual or was it manipulated? That can be debatable. But the fact that fluoride does that to the third eye is not debatable. Okay. Other things that calcify the third eye, and please don't worry because you can decalcify it very easy once you learn how. But other things that calcify it is sugar, drugs. Sugar is a known drug. Sugar is a neurotoxin as well. Sugar is white sugar, which, I mean, it's the biggest drug in the world. Is processed the same way as any of the other whites like cocaine, methamphetamine, whatever those other things are. I don't even know. So that alters your brain capacity too, right? So sugar, artificial sweeteners, some of the worst. I mean, there's a whole history on artificial sweeteners and why they were developed and introduced for free into the society. Why? Well, that's debatable why, but if you trace the history of who owns it and the people associated with who owns those artificial sweetener companies, what their roles have been in history in terms of the leadership roles they've played, there's a lot of interesting information there. You know, I don't want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but I'm also not in denial. Regardless, it is factual that those artificial sweeteners calcify the third eye area and those highly sensitive organs. They're organelles in the brain, mini organs. Genetically modified food substances do it, and chemicals in the food, such as anything sprayed ever. The company formerly known as Monsanto, which has now been bought out by Bayer Corporation, which is famous for the aspirin, a big pharma company, but they do lots of other things. So we have to understand these are the things that have calcified this third eye. This is why so many people don't know if it's real. It also does dumb people down, and it makes them less able to utilize the full capacity of their brains and their clairvoyance and clairsentience. This is the science behind intuition and why people aren't really part of why people aren't utilizing it and that they don't know that they have it, right? There's other things that calcify, but let me just say it can be very easily decalcified through various meditative practices, very easy, and energy work, and easy to learn, easy to do. Certainly I teach it in all of my classes and mentorships, and it's part of what I make sure everyone in my Sacred Visionary group is outstanding at doing it for themselves, and they learn it quick and easy. It's teachable, it's learnable. Everyone can and should do it if you want to develop your intuition, certainly, but also if you want to use more than 10% of your brain capacity, because the science is out on that too. The vast majority of humans are not using 90% of their brain. And if you've looked at any of those studies, those images, it's like an iceberg, and you'll see those images, 10% of the ice is above the water and like 90% of the ice is below. And it's symbolic of how 90% of our brain is in the unconscious. We're unconscious of 90%. The more you meditate, the more you activate that pineal gland and that pituitary gland, The more you awaken this capacity, the more clairsentient and clairaudient you become, and the more claircognizant you become. We haven't gotten into that one yet, but the more of your brain capacity you are using, and you're no longer in just the 10% range of people. When you interact with people, by the way, who are only using 10%, it becomes very evident, very clear. They can't process, they're not getting it, right? Okay, so let's go to the claircognizant. Claircognizant is also a tool of the pineal and pituitary, but it's also a function of using other extrasensory abilities. Claircognizant is the ability to simply know. It's one of my great gifts. I know a lot of things. Sometimes I can't say them because I also know that the people around me don't want to hear them or don't want to know them. And it's not my business to force it on someone. It's never our business to push something on someone because they have free will. And if their free will is to not know something, they have that right. I had to learn that from my family. I really did. And just in order to function in the world, you can't just push things on people just because you know something, right? It's basic, right? But the ability to have more claircognizance, clair knowing, comes through opening that and also activating what all of us have access to is a theta brainwave. Now, I started teaching theta brainwave, opening and accessing the theta brainwave years and years and years ago when I was teaching animal communication more regularly, animal communication and telepathy, because in order to communicate telepathically with another living being, an animal or anyone else, you have to be able to access a theta brainwave. I have a core teaching inside of the Sacred Visionary and mentorship and inside of my animal communication classes. It's my unique approach to teaching how to access that. And I sort of outline it also in some of my books that are on animal communication. But regardless, there is a principle and a practice. I teach a very unique approach to accessing the theta brainwave. Once we learn to utilize it, that is an information superhighway that can allow us not only to further develop our clairs, all of our clairs, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairaudience, clairsentient, all of them, which I'm still going through, but definitely to enable us to have telepathic dialogue and communication with other living beings and other forms of sentience, which could include rocks or planets or weather patterns, weather storms. The list goes on because there's sentience in almost everything. I once had a student years ago inside of the Akashic Records class, and she had this incredible dialogue with a pencil. And it's just a form of consciousness. And it's possible, right? I remember years and years ago, and now it's something I can do myself quite easily, although I don't use it that often. It's a form of being able to communicate with any item where you can extract information. So years ago, before I got my Reiki master, I got initiated into what's called the Reiki, which is an energy healing modality. My Reiki master took an item from me. It was a watch, and she held it in her hands. She closed her eyes for a few moments, and then she just popped open, and she said, "Laurie, you are going to be an incredible teacher and healer in the world." I mean, my eyes popped up, and I was like, "Really?" Like, I had no idea either, but she got that just from tuning in to that consciousness. It wasn't really the watch itself necessarily, but she utilized that piece of consciousness to access it, right? So this is another form of telepathy in a sense. Okay, we all have that ability. Now let's talk about clairsentience, which is clear feeling. All the talents work together, by the way. But our skin, which is the largest organ of the body, is always receiving and exchanging information and energy all the time. That's why when people get like goosebumps or tingles, they're like, oh, right? Because that's another form of intuitive insight and communication. So we all have this, but if we're eating really dumbed down foods, which I referred to earlier, or if we're putting chemicals on our body or chemicals in our body, overuse of inappropriate pharmaceuticals or whatever is not right and appropriate for our most benevolent best. Because I'm not poo-pooing when there's a place and time and it's right and appropriate for a body to take some kind of pharmaceutical. I'm simply saying sometimes we're misusing them or not using them appropriately, or we're overusing. I certainly was at some points in my life. Part of my story, there was a point in time where well-meaning doctors had me on cocktails that were like, I mean, you could line them up across the table and fill up a whole wine glass with them in all multicolors. Like, that was just not appropriate. And yet that's what I was being told to do at the time, because I was so empathic. I was so sensitive. I didn't know how to navigate my sensitivity. I didn't have a mentor or a teacher, right? Okay. So regardless, by the way, as soon as I got aligned with my path, they were gone, like overnight practically. I'm not saying that's right for everybody, but it was for me. Regardless, the clairsentience comes when we stop being dumbed down and shut down in all of the energies of our field, right? Including our skin and the ability to receive and exchange information with the physical and non-physical world. So clairsentience can get further developed that way, in addition to the other ways I mentioned. Clairsentience, which is clair feeling, empathy, also gets developed as we open up what's called the magnetic heart center. So our heart center for most humans is really shut down. We're overusing our analytical brain and our reptilian brain. Once we start further developing and opening this heart center and utilizing it, and the Institute of Heart Math is so incredible for having done so many studies on this. I participated in many of their studies, big group studies around how to get into heart coherence, how quickly a group of us could get into heart coherence and could open up that magnetic heart, etc., and utilize the magnetism of the heart center. If we don't know how to do that, we're shut down in this area. Most humans still are. It doesn't mean they're not loving. It just means they haven't learned to utilize this multi-chambered magnetic heart center. And we know already through scientific studies, including the Institute of Heart Math, that the heart does have its own brain matter, literally, and that brain matter can be cultivated and developed. And we can use a kind of brain, heart brain, which is not an analytical brain. It's so fascinating to utilize that heart brain. In my meditation groups, DNA activation webinars I teach people how to utilize the heart brain, how to strengthen the heart center, and actually literally breathe through the heart. It sounds strange. I'm sure science hasn't discovered that yet, but it is possible. It is real. We do develop it. Okay, so I get it. Some of the stuff could be really far out there, but science will reveal this in time because it is real. And part of the evolving human, which is becoming who we're evolving into, which will be likely labeled at some point as human divinicus or human luminous, something along those lines, we will have a 5-chambered heart. I've been told that it's going to take, obviously, eons of time. I don't know how much time in linear time, but we are growing. We are strengthening our hearts, and we are building our heart muscle to be truly more loving and compassionate beings. And we have to open that heart center to do it. As we do, our ability to be more intuitive develops and to use our intuitive gifts. Okay, we call them gifts and talents, abilities, right? They're innate to who we are. Okay, so what else? Clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairgustance, the ability to smell. Of course, this is also linked to this pineal pituitary gland and the decalcification of this area. We can smell way beyond what our perceived senses are. When I walk into places like an Airbnb or hotel room or even like food places and they've overused chemicals, I get like nauseous from all the chemicals. It's so repulsive to me. I understand. I have a negative association with it. I probably could neutralize my association, but to me, the overuse of chemicals is one of the worst, most harmful things we do in our physical world and in our environment. I get it on a certain level that could be neutralized, but neutralized from a higher perspective, not dumbed down and desensitized from a lower perspective. When people can't smell it, I'll walk in and I'll be like, it's so much chemical in here, and they can't smell it because they're dumbed down. That brain is not working. They're clairgustance. Gustance is taste and smell, right? It's not working properly. So We have the ability to smell, Gustians taste even more, right? When I got my Reiki, my master's in Reiki, my Reiki master, and when I started developing my gifts, and when I started eliminating artificial foods and substances from my eating, my taste buds woke up. I could taste food in a whole new way. It was like falling in love with the taste of a carrot, celery, like so simple, right? And yet our ability to taste so much more richly and fully. And then to be able to compare that to foods that I would call dead, like canned foods that have been on the shelf for years, or something boxed, or something that's got all kinds of preservatives and artificial ingredients in there and artificial colors. It's yucky, right? But we don't realize it if we're shut down. But this is extrasensory abilities too. Now, you might say, well, what's the difference? Why do I want to taste or smell things that are yucky? But if you want to communicate with an animal and you need to find out like what's going on with that animal, the ability to taste what they're tasting, or smell what they're smelling, or see what they're seeing, or hear what they're hearing. If you want to find a lost animal, to be able to see what they see, this is a requirement. So you could say, well, it's not that important to smell things that are yucky, like chemicals, or it's not that important to taste things that are yucky, but it is important to be able to do it if you want to develop your extrasensory abilities. And it is important to be able to know your likes and dislikes if you want to live your best life. And it is important to be able to discern what's really good and healthy for you versus what's not. And that's what we're talking about here. All right. Along the lines of intuition, developing intuition, I also want to say that beyond the theta brainwave and the heart center and the pineal, the third eye, and the skin as a receiver and exchanger of information is also what's really gone on too, is just the balance between the left brain and the right brain hemispheres. For most of humanity, they're overutilizing the left brain, which is a reptilian brain. We could link that to our origins. If we believe in Darwinism, we evolved from reptiles. Or if you're a person who believes in star family races, there's a reptilian agenda there of old ancestral races that gave us those abilities. However, whatever you believe, we can unpack that in the future, but in future episodes. But regardless, we've been overutilizing a left analytical reptilian brain, underutilizing a right knowing sensory brain. And we have not been utilizing them in harmony together, in balance, which this center, I think it's the cerebral cortex here, if I'm saying that correctly. If I'm not correct, say someone can correct me. But this center part of the brain has got them sort of divided. So when we do meditations, we are unifying these sides of the brain so that they work more in collaboration and harmony together. It is a fascinating process that we do through meditation and healing, and guidance leads us. So we're actually cultivating our ability to use more of our brain in a more appropriate way. And the brain, of course, is a tool for the evolving human to use in a conscious way. So this is where more of our extrasensory and intuitive abilities come from. And as we develop this, we use it more in life and in our world to navigate our reality. There's a lot more on this topic, obviously, but I'm just introducing the physical science of it so that it can help more of you understand that everybody has these abilities and everybody can develop them. There are definitely aspects of that they get better as we get more aligned with our integrity, as we become more spiritually aligned, as we cultivate these gifts in service and contribution. Those things enhance and strengthen the gifts and further develop them. But these are just the basics. One more piece here, and then I'll start to wrap up. We all know you have chakras, right? I mean, you got your major 7 chakras, which basically really you've got way more than that. You've got actually at least 108 to 144 chakras. There's minor chakras. Let's just work with the major ones, right? We know that at the base of the spine, in the tailbone area or the buttocks region, that is a major energy center. Now, a doctor or someone in Western science might not call it a chakra, but they get that that's a major center where major organs meet and major things happen. There's pooping, there's releasing. There's kinds of stuff there, right? That energy center is responsible for all kinds of workings of not only the physical body, but the energetic field. For example, most people don't realize probably that the root chakra there at the buttocks is storing up so much of your soul's agenda. And now this is a huge part of what we talk about on this podcast, right? Because if that area is blocked, a lot of people don't know what they'll go around looking for their mission or purpose. They'll say, I don't know what my mission is. I don't know what my purpose is. I would love to do a podcast episode on that in the future too, but just let it be known that if that area is blocked energetically, that will be a core issue. That area is also linked to survival and safety. Now, isn't this a fascinating connection, what I'm about to say? In the year that COVID happened and all the toilet paper was gone from all the shelves, the time when people felt most unsafe, they're going out shopping for toilet. Why? Because they were blocked in their buttocks area and they needed to feel safe. That chakra center was blocked and shut down because it's linked to survival. It's linked to physical safety and survival, connection to the earth, life itself. It's fascinating, right? Okay, you may say that that's a little too far out there for you, but it is an interesting association that for me came through very clearly, psychically. Like that's part of why that's happening. It's not the only reason, but it's a major reason. They were also being influenced, maybe. That's a separate story. Okay, let's go on with the chakras. Your second chakra, in a sense, in your physical body is the reproductive center. Obviously, we know that's a major area of your body. No doctor or no scientist would deny that. They might not use the word chakra, but that is an important energy center. Babies are created from that center. There's a balance between feminine and masculine energies. There's a balance between relationship dynamics. That's all linked in that center. And that center does function or misfunction if that chakra is off, or if the energy is blocked or depleted. There are problems in the physical body. Same with all the chakra centers. If they're blocked, if they're stuck up, if there's blockages, there's problems in the life. So same thing with the belly center, that chakra center, which is linked to personal power. It's also linked to self-esteem. If a person has power struggles, that's going to be a major energy center. If you're an entrepreneur or you run a business and you're having employee challenges or challenges with colleagues, or even at work, you're having trouble with bosses or colleagues, family dynamic, this second and third chakra areas are influencing factors there. So I hope this makes sense. Same thing, we can go into heart chakra. This is a lot of times where love or compassion or sense of security, sense of feeling loved, being loved, lovability, care, right? When people are shut down, they don't care. They're able to inflict pain and harm on others. They're able to be cruel. I've had people be very cruel to me, people in the spiritual world. And I thought, wow, they're not really walking their talk. But my ability to forgive, my choice and willingness to not let myself be harmed or hurt by them, that was because of me. Because this heart center knows what love is and knows how to love myself and knows how to receive and accept love from the divine and knows that is always infinitely present, right? This is heart chakra stuff. Okay. Major energy center obviously controls the lungs, the hearts, the breast, the upper back, mid back area, and all the organs in this area. So, okay, we can go on. Throat center is linked to the way we express authenticity, truth. Obviously, it's this whole area, teeth and mouth and throat, thyroid. We've got all the stuff going on in this energy center. And if this energy center is blocked, there are problems here. People grind their teeth. People aren't expressing. People have teeth challenges. It's all kinds of things go on here. And it happens even in children when they get cavities. It's usually, yes, in the physical, you can link it to sugar or the foods they eat, but it's a function of feeling shut down and or blocked here. Usually these chakra centers can all be cleared. I also mentioned obviously already this one and this one, right? Third eye and crown, right? When they get opened and activated, all the capabilities that start to come online. So the chakra center, also known as the chakra centers, also known as the core pillar, have to be cleared and resolved, right? The stuff gets stuck and blocked in there, and it's not meant to be stuck and blocked in there. And it leads to and contributes to ill health and lack of energy. We're not as productive in our lives as business people. We can't be as productive. We can't serve as well because we're somehow blocked, shut down, and run down. And because our intuition is not able to flow through us. The energy of life force is not able to flow through us. So these energy centers need to be cleared ongoing and regularly, just like we need to take a shower or floss our teeth in an ongoing and regular way as well. This is not woo-woo. This is real. And just because you say potato and I say potato, in other words, one person might call it an energy center, another person might call it a chakra, another person might call it just the heart, or Western medicine might refer to an energy center as an organ, a group of organ, whatever they might use, terminology, it's there and it's real. And we're the ones who are responsible for clearing it and making sure that it is clear and unblocked so that we can function at our ideal and optimal state. People can clear your chakras for you. I can do that for you, and I can teach you how to do it. But ultimately, it's your responsibility as a human to take care of yourself and make sure it's done and that you know how to do it. And it's not like when we grow up, our parents teach us how to brush our teeth and floss our teeth, hopefully. But that's not taught in Western society. Clearing out your chakras, opening up your pineal and pituitary, activating your crown. It's just not taught. And yet it's so important for us, so important for our evolving human species and for us to function at our ideal and optimal state and for us to be our most benevolent best and really to fulfill our role here, to do the service we're meant to do. If we're not functioning well, if we don't have these gifts online, we cannot deliver in the way we're meant to. And we are not living our best, highest to best. And we are not serving in the most benevolent best ways. And we are not fully aligned because we're blocked and it interferes in us, in our lives. So this is why this stuff is so important. And this is really helping you to understand that we all have these gifts, talents, and abilities, but we have to get rid of whatever it is that's been blocking or interfering, whether it's chakra blockages or just not knowing how to do something, or whether it's eating unhealthy or putting ourselves in unhealthy environments, whatever it is, so that we really can resolve these issues and do the work we're here to do and be of service and contribution in the way we're meant to and live the best lives we're meant to live and be the best expressions of ourselves. I will say that when you start doing this, you have more energy, you have more vitality, you have more strength, you have more enthusiasm, you have more to give, you have more to serve. You can do those all day, batching days for your YouTube videos or for your podcast. You can deliver, you can show up on stages, by the way, and you don't have to prepare. I almost never prepare almost anything, almost ever. Not for podcasts, not anything. I just get a message like, this is what you're going to deliver. This is what you're going to talk about. You might want to bullet point these few things. This is because I'm clear, right? And I don't have to rehearse. I never do rehearse. Do you know how much time I save? You will too. You don't have to do that work. You don't have to prepare, rehearse, memorize, none of that. Because when you're clear, it just comes through. It's part of your divine mission and purpose, whatever you're here to deliver. It's part of your unique expression, however you're meant to express. It's part of you being empowered, however you're meant to show up. This is part of the intuitive gifts, talents, and abilities. You know how to help people. You know what they need, whatever it is in your area of expertise. If you don't, you know how to tap in and ask for guidance, for clarity, for insight to help and support and serve, whether it's an animal, a human, an area of the earth, land. These gifts are within us. Okay, this is a much longer topic, of course, but I hope this gives you the basics just to understand, like, you have these gifts. Everybody has them. They can be awakened and activated. They can be cleared. They can be cultivated. They are learnable and teachable. So while they are gifts, they are also more than that. They are skills. They are acquired and learned at the same time. Both are true. and they are teachable, they are learnable, and it is possible and available to you. And it will help you tremendously in your life, in your business, in all your relationships. Without question, it will really serve and support you, and improvement of your health and well-being, of course, as well. So, all right, I hope this has been helpful to you, and certainly take what you like, what serves you best. And I am going to sign off for now. It is my joy, my pleasure, my mission and purpose to share this kind of energy and information and consciousness with you, to support and assist you in your evolution, in your upliftment, in your transformation. Thank you for being here with me today. I'm so grateful to you and for you. With that, I'm sending you so much love. And until next time, farewell for now. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening today. If you loved the show and if you benefited in any way, if it helped you to up-level or expand your consciousness, if you gained any new insights or ideas, if it made you think or become more aware, or if there were some strategies or intuition that you may have benefited from in any way, would you please do me 2 easy and simple favors? First, if you would be willing to leave a review, it would mean the world to me. I'd be so grateful. And second, if you're willing to share this show with anyone else who would benefit, you can either post it on your social media or just email it to someone and share it with another person or any other people. It would be so awesome. This kind of thing is so helpful in expanding consciousness on the planet and helping others to benefit from this kind of teaching, which just simply isn't generally readily available in the mainstream. So sharing it really helps others benefit and helps our planet evolve and awaken. Plus, expressing gratitude and generosity in this way will also expand your capacity to give and receive even more. Either way, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for participating and for sharing, and overall, just for being the magnificent, the spectacular, the brilliant, the fabulous, the wonderful you that you truly are, and for allowing yourself to be the very best version of you today and every day. All my love and gratitude to you.